Ready? Awesome. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode on the Master Your Mental podcast. I am very excited to bring you yet another eye-opening conversation on the topic that has transformed the life of my special guest. As you guys can see, we are speaking about conquering addictive personalities today. I am bringing on the wonderful Tricia Nelson, who is an emotional eating expert who lost over 50 pounds along with being a best-selling author of Heal Your Hunger, podcast host of the Heal Your Hunger show, TEDx speaker, and highly regarded coach. I can't wait for you guys to hear Tricia's powerful story, journey, and helpful tips today. So without further ado, welcome Tricia to the podcast.
Thanks, Paris. Great to be here.
Yes, so excited to have you here because you guys, before we got connected, I was checking out, Tricia's background, and she does so many helpful things today on this topic, and you're going to hear it from inside of her story. So before we go ahead and dive on in, I would love if you could tell us about the one thing that lights you up like nothing else in this world.
Oh my gosh. Honestly, it's talking about emotional eating.
Yes.
I mean, I can just do it for, days on end. And I basically do. But yeah, I think because it's a misunderstood topic and it's so central to my own experience. And I really feel like because I've been doing this my whole adult life, I have an understanding of it that is unique and a way of explaining it. I think that really helps people who suffer with this problem, helps them really understand what's going on. So I just, it's the thing I'm here to do. It's the thing I believe that God wants me to do. And it's, I think, evidenced by how lit up I get by it. So that's it.
I love it. And I love it, like how I can just hear it in your voice and like just hear it, like, and how personal it was for you, because this is something that has impacted you, as you guys can hear, like in the introduction, like losing 50 pounds, like having that experience and then identifying, this connection with addictive behaviors and all of these things, because it's really so much deeper than just the food, just the eating. And I'm sure like we're going to get into all of this today, you guys. So, I'd love to ask you, talk to me a little bit about like, what was it like for you in rewiring those previous beliefs that you had surrounding food to be able to beat the addictive behaviors that you used to have?
Yeah. So, I mean, just to give you a little background on me, I started, I think, using food to numb my feelings way back when, like as far back as I can remember, like 3 years old. So food was always a huge highlight for me. And I love to, when I got older, I love to cook. I love to eat. Obviously, I love to serve food to other people, go out to restaurants. It was like just this big ding, 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 like highlight for me. Like if I was going out to a restaurant at night, I was like all excited. And so it was just my go-to all the time. And it never occurred to me as an emotional eater. I just thought I liked food. Like, I just thought I liked food. Problem is I did gain weight really easily. And so I had this tummy on me, and I would scrunch it up in my hands and imagine cutting it off, like you cut fat off the side of a steak. Or I thought about getting some disease where I'd automatically lose weight without dieting, or even consider joining the army. So I'd be forced to exercise at boot camp. And that's really just like how desperate I was, because I had tried so many diets, because it's the thing you do. Like, you don't like your weight, you diet, you eat less, exercise more. That's what people tell you to do. And it didn't work for me. Like, I was a yo-yo dieter, so I could do it for a time, but I'd always bust out and start binging again. I was a binge eater, so I'd eat large quantities. I wouldn't mean to, but I'd start out by eating some ice cream and cookies or whatever. And then I just keep going back until I felt totally stuffed and mad at myself. So I would, lose weight, but I'd always go back to eating. So my weight would fluctuate a lot. So I had like 5 different sizes of pants in my closet because I never knew what size I'd be. And so it was just really demoralizing, because I would always end up, going back up the scale, being embarrassed about how I looked. And so after you try diets for a long time and you try other surface things, By the grace of God, I started to clue in really early in my life, and started to realize, hey, this is not a winning solution for me. This isn't working. And so I started going deeper, and I started looking in like therapy, and I had an eating disorders therapist, and I went to 12-step programs. So I was on a search, and I find that emotional eaters are seekers because they're hitting their head against the wall so much that you're just like always like, what's the next solution? So, but thankfully I started going deeper, and I finally met somebody who was a spiritual healer who had been obese, who showed me how to do that deeper work to address what was driving me. I didn't get it in therapy because I think in therapy I was more trying to figure it out, and so having somebody who'd already had the experience himself and could sort of guide me from that standpoint of what he literally did to heal, changed everything for me. And then we started working together to help others heal. So I did that for decades. And then about 5 years ago, started Heal Your Hunger, because thank God for the internet and Zoom and all these things, you can touch more people, around the world. So I do all my programs online. And again, it's just my joy to talk about this topic, because so many people are doing what I did. Like they're hitting their head against their wall. They're trying to, treat the symptom without going deeper, and they're not getting where they need to go. So it's really a pleasure to be able to talk to people from my direct experience.
I love that so much. And just like hearing how you literally turned something that was so painful for you and so overwhelming and so hurtful for you, something like that, and turning it into something that you can put together and help other people through. I love that so much. And, just listening to you talk, like something came up for me that I would love to ask you about. Cause I know, you mentioned trying therapy and all these different things and all these different diets, and nothing was a fit, and it just sounds like, yeah, like such a hard and frustrating process. So I would love to ask like, what was it like for you when you discovered what was at the root of the emotional eating, and like what was that thing that you think was at the root of it?
Yeah. So what my experience is that it's never one thing, and so a lot of people are like, they see to me all the time, like, I know why I eat. It's because, my dad abused me. It's because my mom left home. It's because whatever, right? My brother sexually abused me, whatever, and I had trauma. I had sexual abuse in my childhood. But here's how it goes. Like, you have trauma, and most emotional eaters, people who struggle with food and weight chronically, do have trauma. Like, it's like everything wasn't like, roses and rainbows at home, but not always, not always. We're a culture that just eats to fix everything. That's kind of where we're going with that. That's why almost 1 in 2 people are overweight or obese at this point, statistically. But anyway, yes, trauma is, very rampant among people who struggle with food and weight. So the thing is, conventional wisdom is, okay, go get that trauma dealt with, go to therapy, get the trauma dealt with, and you should be fine. Problem is, when we're kids and stuff's happening, we are reaching for whatever coping tools we have available, food being one of the few. Okay. You can't go score drugs. So you're going to eat, you're going to eat in front of the TV. You're going to eat popcorn ice cream in front of the TV. It's a handy, accessible coping tool. I'm glad I had it. Like, I'm glad I had it accessible to me, because who knows what I would have done, or if I would have survived. So food's available. And then we have, and other things like masturbation. I started masturbating. That was available to me. I did that. And so anything to kill the pain and the emptiness. Problem is, we also have coping tools like if you have abuse in your home, if you have alcoholism in your home, or drug addiction, there's a lot of erratic behavior. There is abuse, there's rage, there's a lot of stuff going on. And so you develop coping tools like people pleasing. Okay. Like, okay, if you have a parent that's alcoholic and you never know what state they're going to be in, or they're rageful or whatever, abusive, you better get good at making that person happy. You better get good at cleaning up really fast, making sure everybody's in line, if you're an older kid. And so or older sibling. And so anyway, we learn how to people please, people, who deal with addiction, in their childhood. They're really hyper vigilant. So they're always sort of scanning their room, like feeling where, who's out of line, or how am I going to fix whatever is, a problem. We become really good at caretaking. If there's a parent who's irresponsible, isn't paying the bills or isn't taking care of the kids, we step in and do that. There's lots of things we do to cope, or we escape and we isolate in books, the list goes on and on. As kids, we do what we need to do to survive. And so it's not just the trauma, but it's the web of coping tools that we develop that do help us survive our childhood. But when we bring those into our adulthood, they backfire on us. For example, the people pleasing, like I've rarely ever met an emotional eater that's not a people pleaser. Like it is endemic to the emotional eater's experience, partly because we just didn't, we didn't get a sense of ourselves growing up. Our parents didn't have it. We didn't get it. And so we're seeking it from outside ourselves constantly. Like, let me get the atta girls, from other people so that I can feel whole. So it becomes an addictive habit to just try to please and get validation from outside ourselves. So there's that. And then there's the habit, right? There's the habit of, making sure everybody's in order so we don't get our asses kicked, there's that, right? So it's like this web of ways of coping that did save our life that now backfires on as an adult. The reason why it causes problems to be a people pleaser when we're adults is that, first of all, we're running circles around everybody else. We're exhausting our adrenals. We're tired all the time because we're always overdoing, always trying to get those atta girls, atta boys. But then we're resentful as all get out because nobody's ever as pleased as we want them to be. We never get the validation we're seeking. And it's just a perfect prescription for screw them. Like, they're not validating me. I'm going to reward myself. And we do that through eating or through drinking or smoking or, whatever the thing is. But for me, it was definitely eating. And for emotional eaters, it's typically eating. So I know that's a long answer to whatever your question was, but
no, that is
right.
So good. So good. Cause I'm sitting here and every single time I have these conversations, I always write things down because every time I speak to anybody, there's always something they say that is so different than the way I've heard it. And what you just said right there with the piece of bringing up the people pleasing, bringing up the role of trauma, and especially what you just said of that resentful piece, because no one is as pleased as you want them to be, is so powerful and so interesting, and really just opens up so many doors to explain this. Because like you said, like so many people out there probably, don't necessarily understand like the psychological aspect behind this. Like, how come these people eat so much? Like, why don't they just stop? Why don't they just go to therapy? Why don't they just, do like, why isn't it
moderate,
exactly.
eat less, exercise more? Like
exactly.
we're like we never heard that or thought of that ourselves.
And you know this because, like you're an expert in this. You've literally lived this yourself. You've gone through this, your own personal experience, and especially bringing up the role of trauma, I think is so powerful because like you said, like having that happen. And then also the people pleasing aspect that brings me to, something that came up for me listening to you, share all these like really, really interesting and, powerful points is, what has been if you have one best piece of advice, I'd love to get this. So like, what has been the one best piece of advice that you can offer someone listening today who would like to begin the process of healing past traumas tied to food? What would you say to that person?
Well, yeah. And my point in sharing that whole kind of long list of things is, your question had been about the trauma, and while trauma certainly plays a major part in eating, you can't just like go in there and dig that piece out because it spawns all these other ways of being. And so the ways of, what I do with clients is I don't like go delve into trauma work. I start with how you're being today. Like the people pleasing has to change. Like you're not going to change your eating if you don't change your life. And it's really, I always say it's really a living problem, not an eating problem.
Right? I love that.
Yeah, because when we're people pleasing, when we're doing too much, overeaters or overdoers, we're constantly doing too much. We're packing our schedule. We have no time for self-care. We're just in this whole like cycle of self-denial,
Mm-hmm.
and self-effacement, it has to stop somewhere. We have to like start somewhere. And to me, that is just by slowing down, and there's so many deeper layers to this. Like we overdo, not only because we want to please and get validation from outside of ourselves, but also because we're just afraid to sit still.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're afraid to be with our feelings. My number one thing at all costs was do not feel. Like as
Mm-hmm.
a kid, it was too painful. I didn't have the proper skills to do it, and so I'm just going to check out. I'm going to eat my way through my childhood, through my adolescence, and then in adolescence, I started to drink. So I'm going to drink it away, then I'm going to have sex and kind of cure it that way. It's like all these different addictive habits were all so that I didn't have to feel.
Wow. I love that response and like that answer, because that makes so much sense when when you really boil it down, because like you said, it's so complex. So you can't just, dive right in, like, let's do the work on the trauma. Like, what is it? Like, let's go to, because like you said, that opens up so many doors that might have never ever have been open before. You can't just do that. So I like how you said you start with where the client is now currently with people
Yeah.
pleasing, with all these behaviors,
Yeah.
and then like bringing that to their awareness. Because sometimes, like you said, when we're doing all these things, like no time for ourselves, no time for self-care, going, trying to do all these things, like we don't always have that awareness of really what we're doing, because we're, escaping, like you said, whether that be through sex, whether that be through drinking, whether that be through food. Like we don't always see that. So I love how that's something that you do, is like bringing awareness to that, but then also offering, here's the solutions and things that can help with this, rather than, just like ending it at that. I think that's so helpful and so necessary. And like, that just brings me back to, something else I'd like to ask you with the work that you do with the clients is, what feelings come up for you when you work with your clients to overcome the emotional eating habits that they have in their lives?
What feelings I have
Yeah, like
personally?
yeah, so like when you're doing that work with them, and you're in that process of helping them, like with emotional eating habits, like is there any sort of feelings that like come up for you in the process of doing that? Like when you're working with them, like what kinds of things, come to the forefront for you?
Yeah. Well, I don't find it hard. I
Mhm.
I find it really exciting because there's all these like ahas people have. Like I just share what I love about what I do is I share from my personal experience.
Mhm.
And the thing about emotional eaters is that our experiences are so common.
Mhm.
So and the thing is, we all think we're the only ones who have done the shameful things we've done. Like I've eaten out of the garbage. Like I've binged and been like, oh my God, I can't possibly eat anymore. And I'm never eating that food again because it's so disgusting because I just ate like almost the whole thing. So I'll throw it out. Like this is what I used to do. I'd throw it out and then I'd pass out or go to sleep. And then later I'd be like, ooh, there's cookie. I threw some cookies out. They're still there,
Yeah.
and I'd go get them. And then I'd be like, oh my God, I just ate out of the garbage. That is so disgusting. Turns out it's a very common thing that emotional eaters do because we all
Mhm.
get in that place of total disgust and self-hatred. We're just like in this rash of disgust. We throw everything out and then, God forbid we leave a cookie in the trash. So, I actually did a YouTube video one time reenacting this. I call it garbage eating. I got like 60,000 hits because it's such a common thing, but we're
Mhm.
all sitting there thinking we're the only ones. So we're feeling all this shame, all this self-hatred, which just perpetuates the eating and the beating ourselves up
Mhm.
with food. So the point is, there's so many things that are common about us, like the people pleasing. So when I just describe my own experience, and I've done, a lot of work on myself, I've kind of dug and pulled all this stuff apart, and
Yeah.
I put it all in my book, and so basically when I describe this stuff, it makes people realize they're not alone, which just
Mhm.
immediately removes that sense of isolation. I do all my stuff in mostly in groups. I do a little bit of one-on-one coaching, but mostly in groups because there's so much healing. Just realizing we're not alone, and
Mhm.
community is such an important part of healing. because we kind of just love on each other and the love heals us, and so it's just really important to know that we're like I love sharing from my experience and watching the heads nod and watching the light bulbs go off. Again, that's why I get so jazzed by this. So it's not like I have like flashbacks or things like that, because I've done so much work and I just, I'm kind of an open book that like I just share about anything from my experience, because I know I can use that to be of help to somebody else, because this is not head knowledge that's going to heal us. It's really the more personal and personable I am, like in my podcast, I'm talking all about my own experience, my experience with, my relationships, my experience with my family, everything. The more personal and transparent I am, the more it lands in someone's heart. And it's in our heart that we heal. We don't heal by reading books and studying and kind of trying to, get all the science around this. If that's sexy and our ego likes that because we think we're going to figure it out, we're like going to, read about it, study it, figure it out, get degrees in it. But my experience, the problem, we're not stupid, we're very intelligent. And so the problem isn't in our mind. You can read anything you want about it, but it's really, we have to have our hearts touched. Like we have to have our hearts opened. And as emotional eaters, we've shut down our hearts. We got hurt as kids and we're like, screw that. Like, I'm going to like keep my guard up at all costs because I can't afford to get hurt. Yeah. Right. So we have like this wall around our heart, which feels like protection, but it ends up being like a wall, like a prison wall, and it keeps us trapped in. So my experience is the more, I can come from my heart and share from my experience, the more it makes it safe for other people to share about their experiences and to realize they're safe. And when we feel safe, then we can let the pain out.
That's so beautiful. And I love that example that you just gave of the wall, right? So like we think by doing that, we're protecting ourselves. But like you said, it's like you're boxing yourself into this prison. And I love that because, this is something that is so relatable, because I know even for myself, like I would do a lot of these things myself. When I was younger, going through different things, I would go to food or sex or drinking, or literally like hearing you reiterate that. I was like, that's a lot of the stuff that I did as well. And then discovering down the road, why do I find so much comfort in this food? Like, why do I feel like I can't like separate it? I need to eat this. It's almost like you feel like you'll die without it. It's like, what is going on with that? And I love that that's what you do. And that's what you literally dedicated your life to doing for others, because that is such a gift that is not only transformational for the lives of the clients that you work with, but your life. And literally you're a living, breathing testament that it's possible that you can go through, regardless of not. I love how you also touch on that point as well of you don't have to have trauma. Like not everyone has to have these, experiences to result in this. And I love how you also bring that up as well, because sometimes I feel like people might think, oh my gosh, like, I didn't go through this myself. So like, but I have emotional eating, but I don't have these traumas. Like what, like trying to figure out what is it? And I love that you touch on that, because that's so powerful and just, brings me to this question that I would love to ask you. And I always ask everybody this question because I always get such a different answer, and it's so amazing. And I can't wait to see what you're going to say. So Tricia, I would love to ask you, what are you currently doing right now in this moment to master your mental?
It's really what I do every day. It's what I do. And it's what I teach other people to do. It's part of my step-by-step process. I mean, I start my day in prayer. I meditate twice a day, kind of a transcendental meditation. So 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the afternoon. I've already had my meditation for my afternoon meditation. So those are non-negotiables for me. I read spiritual literature that feeds my soul and gets my head right. I have community with people every single day that are on a healing path, because I can't do it on my own, and I'm not cured, so these are things I do daily. And I try to share I do, because my business is all about helping emotional eaters. I end up sharing every day from my personal experience. So these are all things that 100% affect my mental health. And my experience is it's really about that. I mean, yeah, I'm addicted to sugar and I have to, kind of watch the foods that I eat, so that physical addiction doesn't hook in. But beyond that, it's emotional. Like, it is emotional. And I absolutely have to be on my game in terms of my emotional health. If my feelings get hurt or something offends me or whatever, I have to, my shorthand for healing is write about it, talk about it, pray about it.
I love it.
And writing is really powerful for getting toxic emotions out and without spewing them on other people. So I'll write, if I'm jammed up or pissed off, which happens, my feelings get hurt or something's not fair or whatever, I take it to the paper and I write it out, and I'll use a lot of swear words, and just kind of I want to get the heat out of it, and then I'm in such a habit of doing this and then looking at the fear, like, okay, what am I afraid of? What am I afraid of? What's triggering me? And my experience is when I'm hysterical, which that's just a word, but when I'm hysterical, it's historical. And so I try to look back, where have I felt this way before? Or what is this tied to? Like, why is this getting me so triggered? Where's the heat coming from? So I got to take a look at it, because I'm really not a victim, and I don't want to live as a victim. So I got to look at what's going on with me, so that I can do something about myself, because I'm the only one I can do anything about. So that's sort of my process. And those are the things I do to sort of stay clean and stay, emotionally balanced. Mastery, that's a big word, but I literally just texted my sister this morning. We were talking about shame, and shame from our family, and kind of learned shame. And I said, it's crazy, but I used to feel a lot of shame. And of course, when you have sexual abuse, you feel shame about your body and all that. And I just said, I have, over the past several years, I've become free from shame. Like, I just don't feel it now. I don't have this terrible if I make a mistake, it's not like, oh, I'm so bad and so bad. I'm like, made a mistake, sorry, and I'll apologize. I'm not flippant, but I just mean, I literally hung up a Zoom. I was hosting a Zoom call, and I meant to just leave. I had given somebody else host. And so but I was still co-host, and I meant to just leave, but I was a little quick on the trigger, and I killed the meeting for everybody. And, but in the past it would have been like, oh, I can't believe I did that. And it would have been with me for a while. I'm like, oh, shoot. So I just texted some people, apologized, and then it didn't stick to me. Do you know what I mean? It just didn't stick to me. And that shame is gone now. And I'm so grateful.
That is amazing. Like, just hearing you talk about this, and hearing in your voice, the transformation, and how you used to react to these things, and just hearing what you do to prioritize your mental health and care for yourself. So that way you can deliver, the highest value to your clients. I think that is so true and so powerful. And especially when you bring up as well, shifting the victim mindset and the blame mindset, and, all of these things, and all of the work you've done, and just the transformation, not just in yourself, but the transformation you're giving to others is everything. And honestly, Tricia, I feel like I could just talk to you for hours. I feel like I could just talk to you for hours and hours and hours about this stuff, because it's so powerful, and your story is amazing and so valuable. And I just honestly want to thank you so much for, taking the time out of your day to come on here and share your story, share your tips, share your experiences, be so vulnerable with us, and offer these solutions and bring this to the table, because it is so powerful and so valuable. So thank you. Thank you so much. I have enjoyed every bit of this, and I cannot wait to release this out into the world. You are amazing. So thank you so much for your time. Oh my gosh. I loved it. Loved it.
Oh, Paris, thanks for having me. It's been really a pleasure, and bless you for all the beautiful work you do and sharing your story with the world.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And that means a lot. And I appreciate that. And, that coming from you. So, you guys, I just want to end this on this note and say, whether you are listening during the daytime or during the nighttime, I hope that you guys have an amazing rest of your day or night. And I want to say bye to you guys. And I want to say bye to Tricia. So bye, Tricia.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.